we're joined now by Gary from Propane. How are you today, Gary?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing fantastic. I know everybody's excited about the new album, Voice of Rebellion. But take us back to the beginning. Getting interested in music. Who were your heroes? You know, at what age did you start making music of your own?
Well, my heroes go way back. The first great rock band I started listening to was Kiss. So the first real album that I ever purchased as a kid was Rock and Roll Over from Kiss. And then I started getting into bands like Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden, Rainbow, Deep Purple, all the old greats. And then I started shifting over to punk rock and hardcore music. You know, bands like Champ 69, The Business, Minor Threat, Bad Brains, Negative Approach, the whole New York hardcore scene and DC scene in particular. And then I started to have aspirations of writing my own music and eventually forming a band, which, now this is the early 80s, mind you. My first band I started when I was still in high school, and that was called Crumbsuckers. And oddly enough, we just did a reunion at the Black and Blue Bowl in New York City a couple of weekends ago, which was really great. But it's really interesting how the following for that band has continued through all of these years. It's just amazing.
Now, who joined you at the reunion?
Sick of It All, Rival Mob, Fury of Five, Burn. So a lot of great bands. It was a 2-day festival. The first day featured Madball and a band called The Regulators, which is sort of a conglomeration of guys in Bad Brains and John from the Cro-Mags fronting the band. So lots of bands over the course of 2 days at Webster Hall in New York City, and it was a lot of fun. It was great.
And you had which former members? This was Tom and Dan, or who joined you?
Well, this was most of the band members from my original band. So I had Danny playing drums, Chuck Lenahan on guitar, lead guitar, Chris Notaro on vocals, myself on bass, and Adam Phillips from Propane filling in for the second guitar slot.
Wow. Sounds like a lot of fun, definitely. Now, I know, obviously, you're up to 15 albums now, starting with Foul Taste of Freedom and, you know, Truth Hurts and everything you've done, Act of God. You know, what's the evolution like when you go in to make the new record, Voice of Rebellion? You know, what's your mindset? To just come with the best songs possible, or, you know, what's your thought going in?
Well, we try to always make the current album a little bit different from its predecessor. So, and there within lies sort of the tricky part, because we don't want to write something in which the fans are thrown a curveball, you know. So we want to kind of stay within the confines of being ourselves and stick to our own sound and make the greatest record possible also. So this time, in order to change it up a bit, we made it more of a collaborative effort, writing-wise. So our guitar players took on some of the writing duties. Marshall wrote 3 songs worth of music. Adam took on 3 songs worth of music. The first 3 tracks on the album were written by the guitar players. And our last album, The Final Revolution, I had written the entire record. So it's quite a different process for this record. And we changed up the production values quite a bit. Our last 3 recordings were done in Switzerland at Little Creek Studios, and this record was recorded closer to home in Venice, Florida. And I got involved in co-producing the album, and I wanted to make this a little bit more modern and a little bit more state-of-the-art, I guess you could say, production-wise. And but I didn't want to go overboard with it. I wanted to, you know, keep a little bit of that raw live energy. So, you know, we ended up taking just the best drum tracks that Jonas laid down, and the drum tracks are untouched, so there's no editing, and we just had him record 3 takes of each song. We selected the best one, and then immediately got to recording the guitars over it. So, yeah, it was a different process, but I think it worked. The reviews have been really great so far, and we think and we hope that the fans are going to love it.
Well, I know you've got some amazing songs on there, like No Fly Zone, Age of Disgust, and the title track, Voice of Rebellion. Tell us about any of the thoughts or stories, behind the lyrics for some of these songs.
Well, a lot of them are the result of just my general observations as I go through life, and I like to talk about or bring to the table a lot of negative subject matter for the sake of discussion. Propane is not really that much of an agenda-driven band, so we don't like to, force our opinions on anybody else, because we value the opinions of others as much as we do our own. And but I think there are topics which are certainly worth discussing, and in terms of where the world is going and what we're going to do about it. I think those are things that the collective can certainly get involved in, and everybody can have something in common with what's being said on a Propane album, or most people. I guess the 99%, as we say. But the title track is basically about the band and our substance, our lyrics, what we stood for since our inception. And sometimes you can't help but feel that the voice that we have, falls on deaf ears sometimes. But we need to forge ahead with the message and with our purpose. And I think everybody can relate to that in their own life.
Well, I know on this album you co-produced it with Corey Williams down in Florida. Tell us about the process of what he brought to the table, and how the evolution of everybody working together on this made for a better album.
Yeah, it was an interesting process. I initially started working with Corey on a project called Salvation, which is sort of my local hardcore band here in Florida. And we got in the studio for that, the Salvation debut album. It's called Resurrect the Tradition. And that was released last year. And we immediately just started clicking in the studio. And Corey's a real young guy. I think he was only 20 at the time of the Salvation recording. So now that would make him 21. But he has a lot of talent, which I noticed. And we just sort of clicked in the studio, and it's almost like we were speaking the same language, the same technical language, which is good while making a record. And coming out of the Salvation recording and looking into options for Propane, I thought that this would be a comfortable scenario for the band, and that we could make a good Propane album in Sound Lounge in Venice at Corey's studio. And again, he's a young guy, but young people with talent, they need a shot at doing something bigger. It's a major step for him, and I think we turned out a great recording there. So the studio's it's interesting because it's certainly not a posh studio by any stretch of the imagination. So it has really a limited amount of gear. It's in an old storage facility, if you could imagine. And Corey he plays drums in a band called Unified Right, and it's a hardcore band from Southwest Florida. And his singer was living in the studio at the time. So it was a very interesting situation, a bit of a return to the roots, but I think that's kind of refreshing sometimes for bands to kind of take a step back in their march forward,
Yeah, so you kept that edge in the recording process. There was no luxury involved.
No, absolutely not. And I thought it served the band well. It took us back to reality in a lot of ways, and it made us fight a little bit to achieve what we wanted to achieve. You know, nothing really came easy in terms of the technical process. We had a lot of breakdowns regarding gear. Triggers were endlessly failing on drums. But the performances were fantastic. You know, Jonas on drums performed flawlessly, and the guitar players played great. So the performances were all there. We did have some technical problems, but you know, I think that's just to be expected sometimes.
Sure. Now I know to set up the release of the record, you guys are about to go and do a bunch of shows across Europe, and I know you travel the world. What's the most exciting thing about to go to a faraway land and realize that this music connects us all?
Well, it's great, and it's been interesting to see heavy music take off in such a way in faraway places such as Germany and Western Europe, also in Eastern Europe. You know, it's really sort of taken a front seat to metal, especially over the past several years. And you know, we kind of made Europe a bit of a priority in Propane since the year 2000, I think. We just saw that our fan base was a little bit larger, I guess you could say, in Germany and other countries over there. We started selling more records in Europe as opposed to the States. And so naturally, you know, for the sake of survival, you tend to gravitate toward the places which, you know, are buying your stuff and really keeping the band going. So, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about why the band hasn't been so prominent and present in the States for such a long time. But it really comes down to opportunities and money. You know, it's not cheap to tour the States or anywhere else for that matter. And you know, provided that there are good opportunities, I don't think that we would bat an eyelash regarding touring the States or playing more shows here.
Sure. Now I know from day one you've incorporated a lot of different styles, all aggressive, but from punk to rap and metal and hardcore. You know, what advice do you give to the young bands out there as far as stretching out and incorporating different sounds, or, you know, taking chances to really find their own unique style, or, you know, in any kind of words of wisdom as far as the perseverance or dedication it takes to really survive, especially today in the touring or the recording business?
Right. Well, it's very difficult for young bands to make a mark these days. But I would hate to discourage them, because we need great artists, you know, now more than ever, I think. And so we want to encourage newer artists to really go for it. You know, the opportunities are a bit less than there used to be, but you can still make it in rock and roll, you know. So I know there's a lot of negativity out there from prominent artists, and, you know, shame on them for discouraging younger people from going this route. So I would say, you know, take on some of the old standards, like get to know the music business as well as possible before you dive wholeheartedly into it. And, you know, try to take on as much of it yourselves before giving away a share of your business. And play music that you wholeheartedly enjoy, and, you know, be influenced by your favorite bands, but don't emulate them. If you're influenced by them and you use those influences sparingly and tastefully, then you stand a chance of creating something entirely your own. And creating your own sound isn't easy, you know. When somebody listens to you on the radio, or they hear you on the internet, they just say, "Oh, that's that particular band." It's tough to create a signature like that. Speaking for Propane, it was really done through repetition, you know, and using a lot of the same gear in recordings, and never being too influenced by our favorite artists, and really developing our own sound. So, you know, I know that we've been bashed for it to a certain extent, like, you know, that we sort of stay a little bit in a box. But if you want to make a sound all your own, I think it's important that you at least maintain a certain percentage of your signature qualities from record to record.
And like you said, it's important to learn the business. A lot of, you know, young people get involved in music, you know, for the sheer passion of it, and then so many of them later complain about the raw deal or whatever they got.
Yeah.
So why is it important, you know, that they really only have themselves to blame, you know, if they don't really learn the business and you know, check out the people that want to do business with them, and you know, then trust who they're working with, but keep an eye on, you know, everything. Yeah,
well, I know a lot of guys that got discouraged because they've been because of the raw deal, as you say. You know, they got into the music business only to be discouraged by it through getting ripped off or signing bad deals. I think it's a little bit of a part of the process, unfortunately, and it's part of the process that I went through. I'm certainly no genius, so, you know, getting to this stage, I've had my share of hard knocks, and I've signed my bad deals. I've been ripped off more times than I can count, but I never let that discourage me to the point where I wanted to walk away from it. I kind of, because I didn't want that hanging. You know, I didn't want that in my mind. Like I walked away. It's sort of a defeatist mentality. I wanted to walk away from this knowing that I've won.
Yeah, ultimately you were the survivor. You know, no one can you know, make you quit.
Yeah, and this sort of mentality, it's not just confined to the music industry. It's a sort of a life lesson that, you know, not everything is a win. You're going to suffer your share of defeats, but that's no reason to throw in the towel. You know, you should come back stronger and keep fighting for the things which you enjoy and for the things that you believe in. And, you know, that's sort of been a rule in this band from the beginning. And, you know, with Propane, I think bands can learn a lot. You know, everything is achievable, you know, for young artists. You can do it. You just have to have the right mindset first and foremost, and go about your ways with a certain amount of conviction and honesty, and good things generally happen as a result.
Well, Gary, again, congratulations on the amazing Voice of Rebellion. We look forward to spreading the word, and best of luck to Propane in the future.
Well, Jay, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the interview. It was a nice chat, and good luck with everything with you, too, and I'm glad you liked the record, man. And to the fans, you know, check it out. Voice of Rebellion will be out later this month on SPV Steamhammer Records, and we hope to see you all on tour.